Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. Opossums are the only marsupial in North America. Today we're going to learn more about them. Also, there are many different kinds of ground cover. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Mary Smith. Mary is the Backyard Wildlife Center Curator at Lichterman Nature Center, and Carol Reese will be joining me later. There's a possum on the table.
So
Is it possum or opossum on the table?
That's a great question. This is a Virginia opossum.
Opossum.
In North America, we just have opossums.
Opossum.
Possums is another animal that's found in a different part of the world, but
that?
here it's acceptable to call them possums, but they technically are opossums.
Opossum. I got that, folks. Opossum.
Yes.
How about that?
And I brought a really special possum for
Okay.
you to meet today. This is one of our education animals at the Nature Center. This is not an animal that makes a good pet, and most places it's against the law to keep them as pets.
Okay, that's good
but
to know.
unfortunately for this one, she was hit by a car when she was young and had a skull fracture. She also got imprinted to people when she was in her rehab stage, and so that means she thinks that she's a funny-looking person, or we're funny-looking possums, right?
Okay.
So,
Wow.
so that's why she's in captivity.
Okay.
But most possums, best place for them is in the wild.
In the wild.
Yes.
Okay.
But possums are so unique in North America. They are our only marsupial, which is a pouched animal.
Okay.
And so they're more closely related to kangaroos and koalas than anything else in North America.
Interesting.
So she does have a pouch, and so the females have a pouch, and after just about 12 days of gestation, so from when mom and dad get together until when the young are born, for possums it's only about 12 days.
How about that?
Yeah,
Wow.
they're about the size of your pinky nail, and they're gonna crawl after they're born. They crawl up into her pouch, and they're gonna live there for about another month and a half.
Okay.
And then after that, and she can have up to 13 in her pouch.
Wow.
After that, they're gonna hang out on her back for about another month. She's
Okay.
gonna take them around to some good feeding spots, which can be around human houses,
Sure.
trash cans. We
Sure.
just generate a lot of waste, and they just see that as a food resource.
Got it.
So really unique in North America. Something else really cool about them, if you see their skull, they have more teeth than
a
any
lot.
other land mammal in North America. They have 50 teeth, so that's quite a bit.
50 teeth is quite a bite. Right?
Yes.
50 teeth. Okay.
And they'll use those teeth. Some of the things that possums are kind of known for and maybe misunderstood about is their defense mechanisms. So one of the things they're going to do if they get scared is they're going to show all their 50 teeth. They might hiss or growl or even foam at the mouth.
Oh, gosh.
And so that is just some of their defense mechanisms. The incidence of rabies in possums is very, very low.
Okay.
The other thing they do, a lot of people have heard of playing possum. So that's what possums do when they get really, really frightened. They will actually faint and a lot of times release a foul smelling odor, because most things don't want to eat something that's dead and really smelly.
Sure. Man.
That kind of catatonic state can last up to like 6 hours. So that's kind of a unique thing for them. But unfortunately, it doesn't work on one of kind of the most dangerous things for them, which is cars.
Yeah.
So stopping and growling at a car doesn't really
Yeah, it's not gonna
stop
work.
it, right? And plus roadsides, one of the reasons we see them on roadsides is because they are scavengers.
Okay.
So they're gonna be eating things off the side of the road, and they're opportunists as well. So that's some of the reasons we see them on the sides of
Sure.
roads.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Thanks for explaining that. What is their survival rate out in the wild?
Yeah, so unfortunately, they're pretty short-lived animals.
Oh, wow.
So in the wild, maybe 1 to 2 years in the wild. In captivity, sometimes a little bit older, maybe 4 or 5, but because they reproduce so quickly, that can lead to some health issues as they start to get over a year or 2.
Okay. Wow. So how long will you all keep Sugar?
So she will be with us actually for the rest of her life. So
Okay.
when she was hit by a car, she has a skull fracture. And so her sense of smell is not very good, which is really important for them in the wild to help find their food. And she's also imprinted. So we'll keep her at the nature center for the rest of her life.
How about that?
Yeah.
All right. So if we find a possum in our garden, in our yards, what should we do?
Okay, so I get this question a lot.
I'm sure.
And a lot of times the first thing I ask them is, are you feeding a cat or a dog outside? Because possums don't know the difference between cat food and possum food. So they're, mostly active at nighttime, so they're going to be eating cat food or dog food if it's left outside.
Right.
But there's, what I like to say is you can let them be. They're
Right.
not going to be causing too many issues. Here we go. They're not going to be causing too many issues in your yard, but one of the ways to discourage them is to get rid of the food source that they're coming for.
Okay, got it.
But they're part of our urban landscape. They're great cleaner uppers, so a lot of that waste that we're throwing away, and they're also eating a lot of insects, fruits and berries, stuff like that.
Okay. Now somebody's probably thinking, yeah, but I don't want them in my yard, so
So then, exclusion, right?
Okay,
So
right.
finding out how they're getting in and what they're attracted to, and taking those access points as well as the food sources away is what's going to keep the possums away.
keep them away.
You can also try.
How about
some deterrents, things like a motion-activated light or something like that. That when they come into the yard, it'll scare them right away, and they'll tend to take off. They're not nearly as intelligent as raccoons, so they have a fairly small brain. So things like bright lights, loud sounds will scare them off of an area.
Okay. And you mentioned, so they're active at night.
Yes.
Okay. Oh,
They can be opportunists. They can be more like what we call crepuscular, so active like at dawn and dusk.
Okay.
But as we were talking earlier, they sleep a lot. She spends most of her day sleeping and just a few hours foraging during the day.
How about that? And how long do they sleep?
They can sleep, I think about 18 hours a day.
Yeah, 18 hours a day. How
Yeah.
about that sounds good and relaxing sometimes, right?
Yeah.
How about that?
But she's kind of, she's curious right now. She's kind of
Sure.
trying to figure out where things are. But one of the things you can see on her right now is her tail.
Okay,
And her
yeah.
tail, she can't hang by her tail. Sometimes you'll see that in videos
Yeah,
or
I've seen that.
in books. They can't hang by their tails. Maybe when they're really young, they can. But what she uses that for is to carry leaves up into her cavity that she sleeps in overnight. The other thing about her tail that's kind of neat is possums build up fat in unique places. One of them is the base of their tail. The other one are the sides of their eyes. So if you see a possum with big bulging eyes, it just means that they're a little overweight. At
Really?
the nature center, they're on a diet to prevent obesity, things like that. But sometimes you'll see ones with big bulging eyes, and it's just that they're a little overweight.
It's in the eyes. How about that? Yeah, so how big do they get?
Well, it can kind of vary. She is an adult at this point. She's a little bit of a smaller adult, but they can get up to maybe 5 or 6 pounds, the males can.
That is so interesting to me.
Yeah, and you can see now, unfortunately for her,
Yeah.
because of her injury, she's not great at smelling,
Yeah,
but this is
she's
what you would
sniffing
see them
around.
doing out in the wild is just using their senses
There
to find their food.
Okay. And before we wrap it up, what about this?
Yeah, so this is just a representation of their pelt,
Yeah.
and these hairs on the top are called guide hairs, and that's actually what the young ones are holding on to when she's carrying them around.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Mary. This has been pretty cool.
Yeah,
Pretty
thank you
cool
for
to
having
have
us.
Opossum, yeah, on the family plot table.
Yeah.
At that, how about that? You're doing good, baby. You're doing good. Thank you much, all right? We appreciate you being here today. Crown.
Crown. Okay, well, most people would think that's what the queen's got on her head. But with gardeners, the crown of a plant is the point where the stems meet the roots. It's, in other words, right there at the soil level, that's the crown. And it's where roots turn into stems or stems turn into roots. And in a perennial, of course, it'd be fleshy, and in a tree or something else like that, it'd be woody. So it's just that junction of that transition area.
Hi, Ms. Carroll. Here's a question we get a lot at the Extension office, and Rudy probably gets this question as well. Ground covers. What kind of ground covers do I need to put in this condition or that condition? So you're about to tell us, right, all about the ground covers.
Yes, and you know, we're also developing those lists now to be available online. Our
Good.
website, uthort.com.
Okay,
We're just
good. Glad you mentioned
finalizing
that.
statewide lists to be posted soon, so stay
Good.
tuned there.
Okay.
But I've over the years, of course, compiled my own personal list for the ones that I have used here in West Tennessee successfully, and the ones that I absolutely warn people not to plant. So it is about evaluating the site, you know, sunshade as it is with anything, wet or dry, and then choosing the appropriate ground cover. But another thing I really want to talk about is a lot of times people do just want it to cover ground in a place where it's difficult to mow, or where grass won't prosper.
Right.
But there's also just beautiful design reasons to use it. For example, recently on a hydrangea tour, which of course usually is in shade gardens, beautiful bright golden sweet flag sweeps of it that pulls you around the paths in the garden. Because I do like in shade gardens to look for those golden or variegated plants. Dark foliage plants will often just disappear in the shade against the mulch. And also they provide great contrast. I love blue plants, I love purple plants, but they don't show up unless you provide a pop of contrast sometimes behind it or a golden understory. Those beautiful eucharas, you know, that have the dark foliage, but an understory of the dwarf golden sweet flag really makes them pop instead of against the mulch. So I also want to warn people, they think they want a fast one.
Yes, yes, they do.
But they don't.
They don't.
They soon will find out that fast ones don't know when to stop.
Oh,
That's
gosh.
the problem.
They're like, oh, okay, so stop here. Well, nope. I'm a living thing, and I want to cover some ground, and I want to succeed. So English ivy is famous for being horribly invasive. It'll get up into your trees and in the neighbors' trees and out into the woodland and just keep going. And there's plenty of examples if you drive around Memphis.
Plenty. Yes.
To see. It will eventually shade out the canopy. It's not good for the tree. It's not parasitic. It just shades out the ability of the tree to photosynthesize. Sorry,
right.
y'all.
There it goes.
But it also will create that danger for that tree to be more subject to wind throw.
Yeah.
It catches the wind
Catches the
surface.
wind, yeah. Pulls it over.
I was going to take a picture of a weeping willow covered with English ivy, and they were coming out like little pigtails.
Oh my goodness.
And before I got back to take the picture, the wind got it.
Oh,
That was
how about
just,
that?
just
Pulled
this
it
last
down.
year. So I like to look for the ground covers that will stay in discrete clumps. They may get bigger every year and more full and filled in. And it's going to cost more on the front end if you want a solid ground cover because you're going to plug more in.
Right.
But the lack of maintenance, everybody tells me, I've never had anybody tell me they want high maintenance. So if they want low maintenance, spend a little bit more money, you know, and get these
you're right.
slower spreading ones that stay in discrete clumps. And there's lots of them out there now. There are sedges, and a lot of times we think of our weedy sedges as being problems and running, but there are many well-behaved sedges that do stay in discrete clumps. The sweet flags, again, are ones that slowly spread and come in a variety of colors. Also, I like to find those that will give me a season of bloom. Ajuga has a beautiful little
I was
bloom
going to say that. I like Ajuga.
in the spring, and the moss phlox, the phlox subulata, a lot of people like to call thrift. That's a great little ground cover.
Periwinkle.
Periwinkle will too as well. Sometimes the vinca, the periwinkle, the large one, gets a little bit
Right,
aggressive.
yeah.
And another thing I wanted to mention about those really aggressive ones, you think you're just going to put it there and you have no more maintenance to do, but weeds come up in
Yes,
them.
they
Yep,
do.
they do.
Yeah. Speaking of weeds, right?
Yes, I have gone out and photographed in the vinca right behind the experiment station all the things that birds like to eat.
Oh.
Virginia creeper, poison
Poison ivy,
ivy,
yeah.
privet,
Uh-huh.
hackberry,
They'll drop it right in
the
there.
native black cherry, the wild cherry. That's what happens, and nothing you can spray there to kill it
Right.
that that won't absolutely kill the ground cover as well.
Good point. Yeah.
So that's an issue.
Okay.
I want people to know there's two kinds of monkey grass.
Yes. Please explain that one. Yes. Please.
They're different
Please.
species. Larapi muscari
Yeah, okay.
stays put.
Stays put,
It's
right.
a big, nice clump, gets bigger, but
Gets bigger.
Larapi spicata will run,
Okay.
and it'll run into your lawn and places you may not want it. So I like to use it though in places that it's contained. If it's contained, completely surrounded by concrete, by sidewalk,
It'll fill in pretty quick.
it
yeah.
fills in beautifully, and it looks like a river. It
Yeah.
just blows. It's got a nice texture to it. But if you need slow spreading, now Mondo will do that too, by the way. It's very similar to Larapi
Okay.
spicata. But the little dwarf Mondos don't spread fast.
I like those.
Yes, they're cute as they can be.
Yeah.
And they stay a little tiny height.
Yeah, they're really tiny.
And there's even a black Mondo.
Yes, I've seen that one.
hadn't seen
That's
that. Okay.
beautiful.
It is beautiful, and it is the slowest thing you will ever plant.
You're right. You're right. It's very
So I always tell people, go ahead
tedious.
and buy a lot, because I love how I've seen people use it to make another plant pop, a variegated plant, for example, with that black background. But buy enough to make an impact,
enough.
because it's not
Yeah.
going to spread quickly. You're going to be waiting for years for the effect that you hoped for.
Okay. Now going back to the Larapi for a second, it has to be cut back, right?
If we have yes, it'll start looking tattered at the
Okay.
end of winter, especially if we've had a severe winter.
Okay.
So just, either set your mower on the highest setting or a weed eater, whatever
Okay.
you want to do, you can do that. Also, some of the pretty ones, there's a golden monkey grass called PD ingot. There's a beautiful silvery sunproof is a
Yeah,
common
I've seen
one,
that,
but
yeah.
it's a gorgeous big variegated plant. And I've seen friends use that as a perennial. Just put it in next to something that complements.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
And just a little explosion of gold or silvery foliage. My friend Jimmy Williams up in
Yeah,
Paris
okay.
has a great eye for using those, or even in containers.
Okay.
I use them that way. Some of the ground covers, in fact, make great container additions. If you're thinking about the spillers again, for evergreen, for winter interest, I often leave them in containers for years and just add the summer annuals and then the winter things that I wanted to for more interest. I want to talk about sedums too.
All right, let's go.
Sedums.
I read
Yeah, I like sedums.
sometimes just this blanket statement. People will say, well, sedums make a great ground cover and they take sun and they don't need much water.
Right.
Which
I've heard
one?
that. Oh,
There
Uh-huh.
are dozens of species and
Yep.
hundreds of cultivars.
Yep.
And they don't all make good ground covers. And some of them, we think of them as really loving heat.
yeah.
But some aren't so tolerant of our heat and our humidity. So just to mention, it's okay to mention a Memphis nurseryman by name is Paul Little.
all little.
And he has selected a bunch of sedums that really do well in the South that will make nice, tight, spreading ground covers. Angelina's hard to beat.
Oh,
That beautiful gold, and it gets a burgundy color in the winter. It stays, and these will all tolerate a little bit of shade as well.
Okay.
Chinese sedum, one of my
Oh,
very
yes.
favorites,
I've seen, yeah,
sometimes
that's
called
very nice.
coral reef
Coral reefs, yep.
in the trade now. It gets a little bit of a ruddy color in the winter time. It stays little tight rosettes. And I've seen it do surprisingly well in shade. And if I had to pick a third, there's one that Paul Little called me. He said, nobody comes in here and asks for that by name because it doesn't have a common name. It's Phedemus tachysamense, also classified as Sedum tachysamense. He said, is it okay? People come in and say, could I please buy some of Carol's favorite sedum? Can I call it Carol's favorite? And I said, I'd be honored.
Oh,
So
all right.
here in
Yeah,
Memphis, it has a label on it now.
trade name. There we
Carol's
go.
favorite. Isn't that thrilling?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So that's a beautiful, beautiful sedum. A little bit taller, but again, stays nice and tight, and the texture is fabulous. I use it in containers, I use it in the ground. And the great thing about sedum, you can just pick up a piece and hand it to a friend.
Right.
You can accidentally leave it in your pocket for a few days.
gosh.
And it'll last.
It'll still root.
Yeah.
I often show people how easy it is to spread. For example, Angelina, I'll pull a clump up and go over and throw it on the ground. I said, I'll come back in a few weeks and
And
there'll be a
it'll be
nice
rooted.
patch
How about that?
there. The surprising thing, because they are so drought tolerant, because Angelina sedum roots are just about that
Very
big.
shallow. Yeah.
They get enough moisture from the night air. They don't really require deep rooted. Though some of the clump forming sedums do have deeper roots, so I'm not going to tell you they're all that way, but that's one of the reasons that I like them. If they do get aggressive, and they can get into areas where I don't want them, they're easily removed. You can do it with a rake.
Okay, let's rake it up. Right. The night air is how it gets its
I know,
moisture.
isn't that cool? Oh, remember that if you do get Bermuda grass,
Okay.
in your monkey grass or mondo grass.
There we go.
You
It's a good one.
can
It's gonna happen.
use, yes.
Yes.
It's gonna happen.
And I have stopped and told people, I've seen them all sitting there trying to weed Bermuda grass out of the monkey grass. You know, there's a herbicide for that.
Yes, there is.
Because monkey grass is not a grass. Mondo grass is not a grass.
Right.
They're an entirely different family.
That's
So
right.
you can spray and kill those grassy weeds and those ground covers and not harm your monkey grass or mondo grass.
Mondo grass.
Mondo.
There.
Good stuff. All right. So we appreciate that good information about
One more,
Yeah. Oh,
creeping raspberry.
creeping raspberry. Real quick.
Do you love
All right.
creeping raspberry?
Yes.
That's a great
They
ground cover
are
for sun
unique,
or
yes.
shade. The texture, they'll cascade, and in full sun they fruit.
They full sun.
Little
sun.
yellow raspberries that
Yeah.
are
Really?
edible. No thorns on
They're-
them either. They're just
No.
kind of stiff, but not
Yeah,
prickly.
and
They're
they're
edible.
edible.
yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And they're nice, creeping
I didn't
low.
know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, we need to use that one more.
Okay. But there you have it, y'all. Miss Carol Reese. They're edible. Thank you. That was really good with ground covers.
Good.
Thank you much. Appreciate that.
It's getting to be the end of the year and it's time to clean out the garden. And as gardeners, a lot of times we want to throw everything in the compost pile so we can get all of that good, rich compost. But there are certain things that we need to throw in the trash and not in the compost pile. These pepper plants are healthy, so we are going to take them and throw them in the compost pile for next year. Over here, we have sweet potato vines that are still left, and they are healthy, so we're going to throw them in the compost pile. We have our okra actually blew over a few weeks ago in a strong wind. It looked good. It didn't have any problems this year. We're going to put it into the compost pile as well. Now, our tomatoes, we're in the Mid-South, and in the Mid-South, we have blight problems with tomatoes. And this tomato here, you can see we got blight here. There was blight during the summer, so that we're going to throw into the trash. So you got to consider trash or compost. If it's healthy, compost pile. If it's not healthy, diseased, has bad insect problems, things like that, just throw it in the trash.
All right, here's our Q&A segment. Y'all ready?
Ready.
These are great questions. Here's our first viewer email. We are being invaded by this little gray bug that I hear is from China. They are all over outside and coming inside our homes, and it's like the more you kill, the more shows up. What can we do? And this is Beverly from Whitehaven, Tennessee. All right, Miss Beverly, so before Mary jumps in here, yeah, so this is the brown marmorated stink bug. So Mary, how do we control the brown marmorated stink bug?
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of people are having the same issue. This is an invasive insect that is really invading the south and even moving further north. It's important to remember it's a stink bug too, so don't squish them.
Don't squish it. Good
It
point.
might
Right.
smell a little foul.
Yeah.
So, I mean, really what you can do, I think you were talking about sucking them up with a vacuum cleaner, trying to get them outside, but it's going to be an insect we're going to deal with for a little while.
Yeah, they're going to be a problem. So yeah, if you have a shock vac, I would just suck them up. Something else I would do too. Yeah, go around your windows and your doors and seal those cracks and crevices or caulk the cracks and crevices. That'll help because they're just like we are. They want to go inside where it's warm during the wintertime.
Right,
Right.
right.
So that's what they're trying to do. So anything you want to add to that?
No, that's good. That's good. Yeah, just like you say, get the vacuum cleaner, try to get them out of there, suck them out of there, suck back or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So shock vac, suck them out of there. Don't worry about using pesticide. I wouldn't use a pesticide. I sure wouldn't do that. So yeah, suck them up. You can knock them into a bucket of warm soapy water. That's something you can do, but I wouldn't use a pesticide. All right, Ms. Beverly. So thank you for that question. We appreciate that. All right, here's our next viewer email. Oh, somebody here is going to like this one. I live in a condominium building and I would like to start a butterfly garden. How high will butterflies fly? What plants would you recommend for Zone 7? This is Marilyn from Arlington, Virginia. Miss Marilyn, we're just going to get out of the way. We're going to let Mary here handle that because she loves those butterflies. So
I
there you
do,
go.
and this is a great question.
Okay.
And absolutely, she can have a butterfly garden in a condominium, even if it's
Good.
just in pots.
Good.
Don't have to worry about the height. Butterflies over 15,000 feet. So you're not going to have to worry about the height.
It'll be all right.
But you can plant butterfly attracting plants in pots. And so I would recommend looking not only at nectar sources, but also host plants for the caterpillars. So so definitely some nectar plants that do well in pots, things like the coneflowers, purple coneflower, black-eyed Susans, and then look at some host plants if there's a certain type of butterfly. If you want to attract monarchs, you want to look at milkweeds for host plant. You can also do herbs, which are kind of can serve two purposes. So things like parsley we can eat, but there's also black swallowtail caterpillars like to eat it too. So mix in some herbs, some host plants, and some nectar sources.
That's good. Yeah, so don't have to worry about 15,000 feet. That's pretty high. You don't have to worry about that. But yeah, so yeah, zone 7, we're 7B here, so grow similar type plants. I love lantana. You know, something I would add to that I actually plant in my landscape that you should be able to plant there in Virginia to attract those butterflies. Yeah. I like that as well, but yeah, your recommendation is spot on.
Spot on, yeah.
So yeah, if you need any additional information, just go to your local extension office. They may have a list, butterfly plants for you. Yeah, they're in Virginia. So thank you much. We appreciate that question. All right, here's our next via email. Why are some of my straw flower plants drying up, turning brown, and dying? The season is not over yet, and the die-off started in August. Same goes for my cucumbers. This is Marie from Selden, New York. Just from looking at the pictures, I wondered if she has an irrigation system because straw flowers are drought-tolerant flowers. So if you give them too much water, and if you look at the stems of some of those plants, they die from the top to the bottom.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So that reminds me of root rot.
Root rot,
And then I looked at some of the other plants around that area. They look pretty sparse as well. So I'm thinking it could be too much water.
Could be too much water.
Right, it could be too much water.
It could be too much water,
in that area. Check your soil conditions and things like that. But just looking at the straw flowers and just looking at them dying from top to bottom, makes me think about root rot.
Could be root rot. Yeah, could be that. Too much water in there.
I think it might be
standing in there and holding the soil, holding a lot of water.
It could be. So anything you want to add to that, Mary?
I would just think maybe too much water.
Yeah, I definitely think so. So thank you for that question. Thank you for the picture. That really helped. So appreciate that. So Mr. Booker, Mary, we're out of time. Thank you much. It was fun.
I enjoyed that.
Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us an email or letter. The email address is familyplot@wkno.org, and the mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee 38016. Or you can go online to familyplotgarden.com. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for watching. If you want to learn more about opossums or ground cover, go to familyplotgarden.com. Be sure to join us next week for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.